Souse us therefore in the powdering tub of thy mercy.
that we may be tripes fit for the heavenly table.
Welcome, Meatsmiths. You are listening to a Meatsmith Harvest, restoring husbandry to prosperity.
By means of the traditions of our fathers. This dialogue picks up where we left off in our last episode's conversation. You can find part 1 on our website, YouTube, or iTunes. If the content resonates with you, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/meatsmith and donating a small monthly pledge. This goes directly toward more free media headed your way. Thanks for staying tuned for part 2.
When things are going just perfectly and you're able to milk, how much milk do you get in a single milking? In your perfect situation, when things and you're milking all the sheep and they're all producing well, how much are you bringing into the house at the end of a milking?
We had a really nice sweet spot right before shearing, where I was milking 6 sheep and I was bringing in 1.5 gallons a day.
Say that again. How much was
I
it?
was milking 6 sheep right before shearing, and I was getting 1.5 gallons a day. And I like
okay. Yeah.
So I had two second freshening ewes, three second freshening ewes, 2 older ewes, and 1 first time freshener. And so it was a good mix of older ewes, lower production, first time mama, very low production, and then 2 kind of in their sweet spots. I would like to get my flock to where I can harvest around 1 liter per day per ewe, and I don't feel like I'm pushing them nutriently. But then we sheared our sheep, and you have to fast them. And he had a health flare up the day before, so we just had some chaos, and so everyone just dropped production by half. So
yeah.
The nice thing with my sheep is that they just drop production, and I still get milk, but now I'm getting 1/2 gallon per day, not all the lovely milk I was getting. So,
so out of six ewes, we got about 1.5 gallons when it was nice.
When it was at its peak, and I like that where it wasn't graining them and pushing them for all it was worth. They still had the health and parasite resistance, and it was still a decent harvest where it wasn't like you sit down and squirt 3 times and you're like, okay, that's all I got from you today. It's a good harvest, but not a gluttonous harvest.
Right. I mean, honestly, it's pretty close to a cow if you draw a parallel between, if you say 1 dairy cow is worth about 6 grazing ewes, and that's not too far off the mark as far as what they will take from the pasture, and that's about what we're getting from our cow right now is 1.5 gallons in one session of milking, and it's, there's always those variables that come in and affect your yield. Like we just got through a couple weeks of nonstop rain, heavy rain. And our cow, when it rains hard enough, she's like, forget it. I'm going to lay down. And she just doesn't graze. And so her production went down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing when I first started, I was like, we have to have the same amount of harvest every single day. We're bad dairy people. And I've since come to learn, both through observing my flock and having fed my own son from my own body, there are many, many nuances that affect daily harvest. Are they hydrated? Do they have enough electrolytes? What paddock are they on? Are we giving them good hay if they're on a worse paddock? And, you just have to...
Yeah.
Not trying to keep ourselves to a industrial model production standard, and unfortunately for us, when we were getting into this, that was the only information available. And so that's one thing I'm very grateful with this homesteading movement, or podcasts like yours, where it's like, no, we're not trying to copy the system that caused all the problems in the first place. Like, let's go back to what the peasants did, and let's be mindful of the nuances and that kind of thing.
Yeah. How long will you milk a sheep after she freshens before you decide to dry her off, or does she dry off on her own?
The Gulf Coast will dry up the second we take that lamb off. So with the Gulf Coast native, like a heritage feral breed, and many meat breeds,
they choose.
They pick. You don't get to decide.
Okay.
And
kind of a little segue real quick off that too, with the milk production and cheese and that kind of stuff. We found an interesting experiment this year because we've milked Gulf Coast every year we've been milking.
Yeah.
This year our Gulf Coast ram did not do his duty, so we didn't get any Gulf Coast lambs. We didn't get any Gulf Coast freshening.
Yeah.
The interesting part we found is that the dairy influenced breeds give us more milk, but the cream went down substantially. So your Gulf Coast give us smaller amounts of milk, but much more cream.
A Gulf Coast native will get my Gulf Coast will give me a pint of milk per day, and I use that in place of half and half. With the dairy crosses, I will get a quart to a liter, and I have to put that sucker in the cream separator. Otherwise, it's like putting thin milk in my hot beverage, which is why would you even bother doing that?
Yeah.
So, and it tasted different too. Like when I first started drinking this year's milk, I was like, something's wrong with the milk. Like we need to check their minerals. And it was just the lack of fat made a different flavor of milk. And it was just very fascinating to see that breed difference in the milk.
So, this is the first time. So again, we're learning stuff all the time. This is the first time we've ever had this situation occur. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
The non-dairy feral breed provided less milk, way more cream.
Yeah.
Way more fat content.
Yeah. Which in cheese making, you want that. So, but with my dairy crosses, I get a solid 6 months lactation from them. If I go more a higher percentage dairy cross or a dairy sheep, it will be more around 8 months. And if you go to Europe, their East Frisians will lactate for 10 months. So, but the situation in America is we don't have full bloods of most of the dairy breeds. You can find a couple full blood Awasi. I don't know about Lacoon, but we're still breeding up the genetics in our country to become full blood or purebred, which are apparently two different terms.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
And I would almost argue, and I would also argue climate has something to do with it too. 'Cause like, right? I mean, they were given really well when it was still kind of mild, in the more temperate zone, and now we've got hit with some summer's upon us weather, and
their production drops.
Their production drops too because they're like, I'm hot. I don't want to,
water needs to go up too. So.
I don't produce as much.
Are there any hair or dairy sheep breeds that are hair sheep, or are they pretty much all wool?
No, there are no dairy hairies. There are people who are trying to develop hairy dairies, and actually the higher up president maybe of the Tennessee Katahdin Association informed me that they do have records of the milkier lines of Katahdins. And so, there are people who are trying to take East Frisian dairy sheep or some kind of dairy breed and cross them with hair sheep and try to get either a self-shedding or a hair dairy sheep. The thing with sheep genetics is that they want to be woolly. And so when you cross a hair and a wool sheep, you get the worst wool in the world, but it will still be wool. You rarely get a wool and hair cross that is a hair sheep. So now you can find wool breeds that are self-shedding, but those are still very primitive breeds that are not dairy breeds. And so, that's a kind of intimidating thing to people who are like, I don't want to shear sheep. And that personally breaks my heart because wool is as wonderful for a homestead as the milk and the meat of a sheep is. I mean, if all you do is mulch your poison ivy with your wool, you will no longer have poison ivy and your soil will be improved and you are a happier homesteader because you don't have to deal with rashes every single year. Ask me how I know this, because poison ivy was our main crop for the first 3 years on our homestead, and I'm very bitter about that fact. But we don't have it in our main areas now because I've mulched with wool and it has gone away. So you do have to shear.
And when people say, I don't want to mess with shearing, it's like, well, that's when you find a good shearer in your area. It is well worth the money to have someone come do it because they make it look like an art form. It looks like a dance.
It's beautiful.
Whenever they do it.
Yeah.
I tried to do the same thing and it looks like...
It's not the same thing.
Nowhere near it's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, you shear once a year. You pay a small business similar to both of us, and it's someone living their dream with hands-on work who likes getting dirty. I mean, we our first year we found out was not of a similar religious, political, or sane line of thinking as us, and so we did not decide to continue to give him our money. We went with someone more in line with us. But even then, it was not an unpleasant experience. Like he cared for the sheep and it was fine. So I mean, the point of that being, I've yet to meet a shearer that I'm like, oh, you are just a wackadoodle. I mean, they're good, hardworking people. It's okay to support them. You know, you do have that cost output, but then you have the wool, and then with that wool, you can either grow the world's absolute best strawberries and blueberries and, you know, mulch. You know, I have a friend on the Isle of Skye, Scotland, who can grow things that no one else in her area can because she's mulched with wool for the last 5 years. And conversely, in New Mexico, you know, no one can grow vegetable gardens because the wind just tears everything up. And Marissa will make little waffle indentations and plant plants in there and mulch it with wool, and it protects the plants and keeps the moisture in, and she can grow things other people can't. So, you know, just mulching with your wool, you will be a happier homesteader. But, you know, I spin, but felting is not a hard skill to learn. And they've actually done, you know, since we've worn wool, we don't get sick as often. There's antimicrobial and antiviral properties to wool. I mean, it's just a delightful thing. More people should like it because it's wonderful.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, wool is the best fabric to clothe oneself with. I only lament that I moved to Oklahoma for the sole purpose that it is difficult to wear wool here because it's a little warm.
We wear a lot of wool from February to April, like because with wool you want, like with our Gulf Coast natives, that's my favorite wool for Kentucky because it's a wool that developed in our climate, so it's lighter and it's more breathable. And I don't like my Icelandic crosses wool because that's like, we joke it's polar fleece. So a lighter wool, because there's different types of wool. Not every breed of sheep makes the same type of wool. There's vast differences in the different types of wool. So if you get a breed of sheep like a Tunis or a Gulf Coast native or the more hotter climate breeds of sheep, that wool is more similar to the warm climate, and you know, you can make garments that are more enjoyable to wear than if you got a breed of sheep from a more colder climate.
You're mulching with your wool, and then when you get your sheep sheared, are you just sending the wool straight off the sheep to someone that spins it for you, or are you doing that?
Well, I was doing.
To be fair, there's a spinning wheel just over her shoulder right now. So.
I can. Spin.
Oh, okay.
I know how to spin. If I say so myself, I spin quite well. Postpartum recovery kept me from doing that for about a year. And now that physiologically I can, a very curious, intelligent toddler is not conducive to large quantities of yarn being produced. And so...
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, like, he knows how to sit at the spinning wheel now, and he knows how to hold his hands. Like, he will try his darndest at 2 years old to spin, and he calls it, like, mama's wool. But a wool mill in Kentucky just opened up in January, and so...
we're excited because that's a rare commodity, is to find the mill. That's the hard part.
Yeah, I mean, the mills are kind of like any other small specialty business in America. It's slowly coming back, but either the mills are established and you have about 1.5 years to 2 year turnaround of dropping your wool off and picking up yarn, or you have to find a brand spanking new producer who doesn't have experience, but then you have a much shorter turnaround, about 6 months. So, or you just learn how to process it yourself.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, I asked because that kind of seems like the dream situation is if you can shear them, bag it up, and mail it off, and then
the study
get it back at some point.
Producers who did that in Europe, the dairy shepherds, their profits were 50% milk products, 45% meat products, and then 5% wool was their total income. So
Okay.
the thing with dairy sheep is you have to understand where they're putting their protein. So a wether or an unbred ewe is going to produce a better quality wool than a breeding animal because they're putting their dietary protein into reproduction or milk. And so the wool, like I said, will not be as high a quality. But like when we first started homesteading, we would go through 2 or 3 pairs of Carhartt winter gloves every single winter. And then once we got sheep, I spun and knit work gloves from our wool, and 5 years later, they're still going strong. So, again, I won't win awards for those gloves, but I far prefer those gloves to whatever you get at Tractor Supply.
So true. Yeah, wool is a magical fabric. It can be totally saturated to soaking wet and still warm.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I lived in wool when we lived in the Pacific Northwest. It's just by far superior. So I also want to get into, and we can try to let you go and not keep you on for too long here. But I want to get into sheep health as you have dealt with your herd, which I know is going to be related to how you graze, and if you put any, what mineral do they, what kind of salts do you put out there for them in general? So how do you keep your sheeps radiantly healthy?
Well, we are on a knob in the Appalachian foothills, so radiantly healthy sheep is still something we're trying to discover. Because like I said, we bought a foreclosure. There was no topsoil when we moved here, and it was all endophyte filled fescue. And I didn't really realize until last year the fescue was causing problems. It wasn't nutrient dense enough for what I was asking them to do. I was trying to be 100% grass fed with just a little bit in the stanchion, and we were losing sheep every single year to parasites. And so once I started adding in, especially this year where I'm soaking the grains in the whey from she's making, which sounds weird, but to feed the sheep back their own product. But since soaking grains whey and it's fermented in those probiotics, I have noticed their health is much better than in years prior. So
Wow.
we try to have free choice kelp out for them at all times, which people are like, oh,
Okay, I do that too.
yeah, which especially the primitive breeds do need copper, and more than we originally thought. The studies that say copper will kill sheep were based out of Australia, studying merino sheep, and so you have to understand the breeds do have different mineral needs. A more primitive breed will require more minerals than a more developed breed, and then the soil type too. So like we do use Premier One's selenium and vitamin E fortified sheep mineral because our property is very deficient in selenium. So
like we went to the feed store and just bought their
generic
sheep mineral, and it did not.
It was like we were putting nothing out.
It did not bode well.
Right.
So we had to go. You got to get something a little more specialized, a little more oomph.
Yeah.
This is not something you can just run to the local feed and seed and grab it.
Yeah. There's a book called Natural Sheep Care by Pat Colby. And she has an actual mineral buffet that she has. I tried it one year, and just sourcing the minerals was really challenging. There are now companies where you can get the mineral buffet, but again, with our lifestyle as an emergency services family, you have to check that buffet rather consistently because the sheep will, you have copper out there, which if the sheep eat so much copper that they're overdosing, they can then go to the dolomite or magnesium and antidote the overdose. But if you run out of those things because you're busy and your husband's working night shift and they can't antidote, then you are in risk of poisoning your sheep. And so I look at that book and I look at, because she has lists of health conditions your sheep have, and she ties it to a mineral or vitamin deficiency. And so that's actually why I decided to start adding back in some of the grains and the soaked grains, was because I was looking at the health conditions my sheep were presenting, matching it to a nutrient, and then going, okay, what sheep food has that nutrient? So like they were presenting low on B vitamins. And, barley is very high in B vitamins. The danger with barley, it's a fast fermenting grain, but if you soak it and you have jump-started that fermentation process, it doesn't throw off their rumens, and you haven't thrown off that pH vat. So,
nice.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense. So, and you found that kelp is a good source of copper, a sufficient source of copper for your sheep?
No. We will copper bolus our sheep in the spring. Now, if you have
Oh,
a
okay.
developed breed like East Frisian, do not copper bolus them, because people
Yeah.
have lost East Frisians to just eating horse treats with too much copper in them. But where all my sheep have a primitive ancestor somewhere in their family tree, we found a copper bolus in the spring, right when the parasites come out because the grass is growing. That really helps. So, and some sheep require more or less and that kind of stuff. So I think our herd queen has actually been the most high maintenance of requiring off-farm input to maintain her, but she's also, the best milker with the best fleece, and so she's using all her nutrients. So,
but the kelp and the salt are standard. Like if we don't keep those up, we start seeing the effects of pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And kind of another thing we learned the hard way was back to the bribery thing about getting a relationship with them. You can over bribe.
Yes.
They are never going to say, stop feeding me Snicker bars. They're never going to stop saying enough with the treats.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to be careful of, again, you're talking about a ruminant, fermentation vat, that kind of stuff. Some well-sourced grains and stuff like that is not going to be a problem if it's done in moderation.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that whole thing of you can't just keep trying to win their favor by buckets and buckets of feed bribe at one time. It's got to be spaced out.
You can't have a bulk feeder out for your sheep.
Got to have moderation.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've just kind of learned over time how to judge how much to give them at milking. And I love that idea of pre-fermenting the barley so it's not off-gassing in their rumen, and creating lots of problems that way.
And from a practical, again, more frugal point of view, if we gave them dry feed, they ate through it so fast just in the stanchion.
Like it was like they inhaled and the whole thing was just in them.
So you're having to get up because ours are they let you know when they're out of feed, like they're gonna start stomping and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So you'd have to milk and then get up to go get another scoop to put in there and that sort of thing. With the soaking, it slowed them down a lot. And yes, in very scientific terms, we have a small Folgers coffee can that someone gave us, and we scoop that, put it in the trough, and that takes care of them for a milking. Mm-hmm. So when people are like, what feed do you give them? I'm like, a Folgers can. You know.
And I don't do just barley. Like Lespedeza is actually something else I've started incorporating a lot more into. And when a ruminant is consuming Lespedeza, the parasites will still be present in their guts, but they won't get to unmanageable levels. And so incorporating Lespedeza, we have some of it growing in our pastures. So if it's not a breeding animal or lactating animal, typically the pasture amount will be sufficient for most of our animals. And if the animal won't thrive on just that, then typically that is the animal's fault. But with the milking mothers, we will buy pelleted Lespedeza. So I have Lespedeza, alfalfa, beet, sunflower seeds, the barley, and then some oats, and then I will get flax, and then I'll mix all that up after separating the lambs. If I'm on top of my game, I will then put water that evening with some whey so that it soaks overnight. And if I'm not on top of my game, which is typical, I will throw it in and pray it so it softens in time for milking the following morning. So, but since the soaking and adding the whey, it has been almost night and day difference seeing the sheep not struggle with the parasites in the summer, because we're in prime parasite season right now.
Yes.
And we're not seeing the issues with the milking mothers that we typically would about this time, since adding back in the whey and the fermentation. So
the boar's head in hand bear I, bedecked with bays and rosemary.
How many people do you know who are building their home culture around seasonal harvest and feasting? or that are hunting as you are for self-sufficiency and back to the land values, or that share your artist's passion for human-scale meatcraft. At farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we've created a community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world with these shared goals, and 2 major places for them to learn from and inspire one another. First, we have our semi-annual hands-on educational event, The Family Pig, here at our Heartland homestead in Oklahoma. Come meet Brandon, get your elbows greasy, and over the course of 3 days, kill, cut, cure, and cook 2 pigs completely. You'll rub those greasy elbows with other meatsmiths from around the country, sharing meals and conversations to inspire you for years to come. Secondly, for more remote learning, over at farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources 5 years deep now. And both our on-site classes and online program include access to our most unique and rewarding private community Facebook page, Meatsmith Table, which is the only international network by and for homesteaders harvesting animals on a domestic scale using traditional and regional methods. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search farmsteadmeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you and support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to farmsteadmeatsmith.com today.
Do you kind of expect to have to deworm your sheep, or do you do any wormer?
We will use
are you able to kind of avoid it?
I mean, we'll use a chemical to save our favoriteest sheep, namely the herd queen, because that's been a good thing. We haven't this year so far.
So far, not like we kind of use it kind of like our view is on regular,
Medications,
medications and that kind of stuff. Like if it's to ward off potential imminent demise, we're gonna go hardcore and zap them. Of course, that means your milk supply from that sheep is gone. But we're going to try to do the lesser invasive stuff first.
Like if I have an ear infection now, I'm going to use natural remedies. But there was one time where after I gave birth, I woke up and I had an ear infection to the point of vertigo and I couldn't function. I need an antibiotic then because I have to walk around and take care of my kid, and I will heal my gut for the next year. It will be fine. So, that's
So I mean, we try to do the copper bolus thing. We also grab in the horse section at the feed store. But,
Red Cell.
Red Cell. Big jug, big purple jug called Red Cell, and
that stuff's wonderful.
It boosts their,
Cayenne actually does wonderful things, and if we use a chemical wormer, we always follow up with a week of daily cayenne dose drenches, because if you use a chemical wormer, you are slaughtering all the beasties in the sheep's stomach, and when they die, they're leaving little puncture wounds in the gut, and the sheep will then bleed out and die. If you drench with cayenne, the cayenne will cauterize those wounds, and the sheep can build back, and then you follow it up with the Red Cell to build their blood back up, and then they will survive, and we've had sheep thrive. The thing with Red Cell is it is high in copper, and so we do have to monitor, because the reason why copper kills sheep is they will store it all in their liver until they're stressed, and the copper all hits their bloodstream and it poisons them. So if we're administering the Red Cell consistently, we keep them in a very quiet, peaceful place on the farm, and they are not disturbed. And we're just aware if there's some kind of shock, we have to check them for any kind of copper toxicity. And you do that like you check for parasites with the FAMACHA. If their eyelids are starting to get yellow, then they're starting to get copper toxicity. And I should probably look up what you give them magnesium, and you drench them with magnesium, and that will help offset the copper.
I was going to mention really quick too, as another parasite thing that you mentioned in your book, The Guide to Homestead Dairy Sheep by Rachel Hester, which is really awesome and well written. It's actually really fun to read. So thank you for being writerly about it. But you follow your sheep with pigs, or at least you have in the past,
yes.
and to help cut back on the parasite load, because the pigs will eat the poops of the sheep.
Yes.
And so it can at least interrupt the parasite cycle to a degree. And
now,
that was really creative. I thought that was really cool.
Thank you. A local friend suggested that, and I was like, this is nuts. There's no way. And then we watched it happen, and we were like, okay, we're gonna keep pigs. So we did slaughter our 2 pigs this spring. We have decided that we love pigs. We do not love farrowing. We are well versed in the art of reproducing sheep, not so well versed in the art of reproducing pigs. And so we were like, well, we'll just hold off. Maybe we'll get a pig later. Maybe we'll just buy it from our local person. But then we got the meat back from the butcher.
Yeah, which segue from when we met you at Ozarks, I did find a local butcher who would scald and scrape for us.
Yes.
Nice.
That was a huge blessing, because I was like, will you scald? No one else would do it. I said, would you scald and scrape? He said, yeah, sure. So we got
the skin on everything. The skin's on everything. It is like, and at first I was like, why is there skin on my pork chop? But then you take, the skin and that little 1/4 inch of fat, and then you still have that 2 inches of fat cap on your pork chop, which is just amazing. And then you make grind, and that is just what makes this little Gentile heart happy. So, but
yes,
the thing is, like, the fat from our pigs was not hard. Like, it was nice and soft, and it melts at room temperature, and it's like butter. And I said to Kyle after that first pork chop, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna keep raising pigs with these sheep, and because I was feeding the pig, all the buttermilk and all the whey and a lot of this dairy stuff, which, as you know and taught us, that affects the fat type in the pig. And I was like, these 2 things just have to go together, and I don't want a big bacon breed. I want a lard breed. I want all of the lard. If I have too much, I'll make more soap. It'll be fine. I want all the pig fat. So, but yeah, you watch them.
Yes.
When we would have the sheep, and they would eat everything down, and we'd move the sheep, and the pigs would immediately follow after that. And you could see the pigs walk through the pasture hunting for the freshest sheep poop and eat it like blueberries. Mm-hmm. And then we had to correct our son that they are not, in fact, blueberries. That is not what we do as humans. Do not follow the way of the pig. So,
yes. That's so great, though. That's the prototypical marriage of the piggery and the dairy, and yet another way. What kind of fencing do you use for your sheeps and your pigs? Are they different? Are they the same?
Well, that is why we butchered our pigs, is because we were sticking them in old salvage, not new, old salvage Premier One Electronet designed for sheeps, not pigs. And as you know, sheep are not stupid, or pigs are very intelligent animals. And they learned the exact 6-inch gap in the fence where there was a short in the wire, and she would flip it up with her little nose. And then we got to know all our neighbors very, 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 very well. Yeah. And offered them money.
Yeah. And so logistically we needed the pigs to go off to slaughter. So because the way we got pigs was we
never wanted pigs. No offense, we did not want pigs. We said no pigs. We will support other pig people. Yeah. But then we got a cow. And a friend of mine really wanted my milk because we didn't do corn or soy, and everyone around us did. And so I named my price, and she said, "You're too rich for my blood." I said, "I'm too rich for my blood. That's why I got a cow." And so she said, "Well, I have these 2 pigs that need a new home, and I don't want to eat them because I ate the others, and these 2 I just don't want to eat." And I said, "We're not raising pigs." And she didn't shut up for an hour, and the next week we had pigs. So
we traded milk for pigs.
Yeah, it's like
and all of a sudden there was 2 pigs on our place, and we're like, well, we're just gonna have to wing it. So I will say this much: we are 100% fans of Premier One Electronet.
Yeah.
Can't not say good things about those folks.
Yes.
But in terms of piggery, it did not work out so well.
Just notice what the breed designation is in the catalog of Premier One. If it says sheep fencing, it's not cow fencing and it's not pig fencing. And again, all of our paddocks are pallets. Like we DIY and hay bale string and duct tape. And
well, because our place, again, foreclosed, it had no fencing on it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, not a single bit.
Yeah.
So we either had to construct it ourselves or buy stuff that's portable and movable and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
we need to get polywire for the cows anyway, because then the cows also learned where the shorts were and they just leaned on it and then stepped over it. And free range pigs are sometimes to be expected, but when you have free range cows, that elevates the anxiety levels quite a bit. So
the
Definitely.
it has worked really well for the sheep as long as it's
Hot.
in good working order and hot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the Electronet has been our sheep thing. Like I said, as long as it doesn't have a bunch of holes in it and you've got good current, that has done well for us to hold the sheep.
Yeah, so we're gonna get polywire and stakes for the cows, and then our friend who breeds the pigs said, well, I'll just keep one of the piglets and raise it for you this year, because we kind of have this relationship where if we have too many goslings, she took excess goslings. If she has too many pigs, we take the excess piglets. So it's becoming quite a lovely situation. So she's gonna raise a pig for us this year until we get our piggeriness figured out. So
and
Yeah. And if you're following the sheep with pigs on pasture, you're probably using coonies or something that is less damaging on the pasture. Is that right?
Coons and guinea hogs. And so what we found with that cross is they will stay there a couple of days without too much tearing up. And we really had to have a big rubber thing out there for them to waller in. If we didn't provide, they would
make one.
They would make one. So, and again with emergency service, so we run 3 groups of sheep. We have our rams, we have our milkers, and then we have what we call the maidens, because we let our sheep get to 2 years old before they lamb. And so with 3 different groups moving, and then potentially pigs following, and him working emergency services, not having topsoil, we move each group about once a week, which again is not hardcore, salad, but that's just what we have to work with. And so within a week, the pigs were getting bored and tearing stuff up or trying to escape. So, that's probably the reason why with our friend raising it for us this year, that's better, so we can kind of look at graphs and numbers and be more scientific about it. So I think if we did more a purebred Cooney or like an IPP or those breeds that are specific to grazing, not tearing up, but then on the flip side, you have to make sure the sheep have left enough for that pig to enjoy. And so you just have to look at those, those numbers and the paddock size and all that kind of stuff. So,
and I mean, to the pigs, we also have some areas where, again, foreclosed place, they let it get totally overgrown, briars, brambles, that kind of thing, and we fenced that off and turned the pigs in there, and they did a remarkable job of at least knocking stuff down where we could, maybe do some trimming or something like that. Like, at least it wasn't such the impenetrable mass of junk.
Because you can use sheep to clear out, but if they're wool breeds and they get snagged on a blackberry vine, then you will lose that sheep to the blackberry vine, because as they struggle, they get more entwined in it, and either they hang themselves or panic and die, or they just can't get loose and they die.
And that ties into the fact of, again, with the Electronet's great, it's got to be hot.
Yeah.
And we learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
I was scared of electricity. I didn't know anything about electric fence. So we just put the Electronet up as a barrier, and they got their heads in there, and we almost lost a couple because they got in there and started wrapping themselves up. So it has to, again, love Electronet. It's gotta be electrified.
Yeah.
And not in a sadistic way, but especially when the younger ones are coming.
A little sadistic.
A little sadistic.
It's a little sadistic.
Yeah. When we turn them out on pasture and they go up that first time and they touch that fence and they get a zap, it's gratifying. You're like, okay, you've now learned what the
You
boundary
cheer.
is.
It's sadistic.
Yes, if they've aggravated me, I cheer. So
Yeah. Well, it's great. It's the sound. It's the sound of education.
There you go.
Yes,
Good. They're learning the prance.
yes,
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 yes.
yes. Going full circle too. So again, since you're the Meat Smith Harvest, we actually had to harvest our first dairy sheep this year, which was a totally unplanned, unprecedented, and we didn't know what in the world we were doing.
We had a complete and total prolapsed uterus that we found at 2 a.m.
Oh.
And so I found a YouTube from some foreign country where they showed step by step how to put it back. And I was like, she's walked around our barnyard, dragged it everywhere. The risk of infection is really high. And we thought she was hemorrhaging. So we were like, we got to just take her.
Yeah. And you know, like, backstory is, I come home from work at midnight, I go check the sheep, and all of a sudden there's a huge, you know, bloody...
He woke me up, he's like, there's something hanging out of Luna. I'm like, that's not good. That's not a good thing to wake up to.
There's, you know, appears to be hemorrhaging, so forth like that. So again, this was not planned. I've butchered poultry, but I've never butchered anything with 4 legs. Mm-hmm. I've been around one time over a decade ago, more like 20 years, when a deer was skinned, but you know, that information is not retained.
Yeah.
But you know, and we couldn't get a hold of any vets, and so we're looking around going, we're either going to let nature take its course and she's just probably going to die overnight.
Yeah.
Or we can try to get this harvest.
Yeah.
So made the hard choice to take the harvest. Again, not without any sort of trepidation, because I didn't know what in the world I was doing, and I have enough gravitas of, I want to make sure the kill's good.
Yeah.
I don't.
That was your main.
I don't want to botch this up.
Yeah. That was his main concern.
That was my main concern.
And I mean, okay, I know you are not a super duper duper emotionally attached person to the critters you raised to eat. This was the first dairy you ever born on our farm. She was in the stall she was born, and we're going, oh gosh. So he made the kill. We both burst into tears. Yeah. I'm holding your lamb. I'm giving him every compliment I can think of under the sun, which at 3 a.m. was not that great. But our friend who did the swap for the pigs and the milk, she actually came over because they deer hunt, and she also home butchers, and she's like, hey, I'll teach you what to do. So it was interesting because, like, when we slaughter chickens, there are times when we have hit a certain point of homestead burnout and fatigue where we're like, we're gonna just skin them puppies, chuck the organ meat, there's a roaster in the freezer, and there are more chicken in this world, it'll be fine. With this animal, it was not that attitude. It was like, we are literally using everything but the baw. So, his cousin, Cordon Bleu trained chef, he came and he wanted the offal, and we skinned the hide and I tanned it.
And I called him because he's been wanting our stuff for haggis.
Yeah, he wants to make haggis.
And he wanted the stomach for haggis. So I literally called him that next day. I was like, hey,
if you want it, come clean it.
Sudden Sheep Butchery, do you want to come down and help me so you can get haggis making? So he goes, yes, I'll be there. So
And so it was interesting because, like, we ended up having these little work tables, and his wife's like running around, photographing it like we're some kind of European tour. And so he and Amber are cutting, and Josh and I are cleaning, and then Josh, who's this chef, looks at me and he goes, hey, are you making head cheese? And I was like, I am so short on sleep. Remind me what head cheese is. And so he kind of walks me through it. And I was like, that seems like a good idea. And so he and I are like leaned over this poor little sheep head who's looking me in the eyeball. And I'm like, just stop looking at me, Luna. And we're peeling the skin off the sheep's face. And so I looked up the recipe, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to enjoy that dish as much as I ought to. However, we have had scrapple before with the Amish, which you make out of pig. and he can't eat pork right now because long COVID is awful, but he can have lamb products. And so I made a sheep scrapple with buckwheat instead of corn. And the funny thing was, he's under the care of a natural caretaker person thing, and so he had an appointment after I made the scrapple, and we told her everything was going on, and she's expecting him to have these horrible like regressions, and she's gonna have to recommend all these things, and she goes, "You are remarkably healthy right now. What are you doing different?" And the only thing we were doing different was we were eating the scrapple every day because it was prepared and it was fast to fry up and it was there. And she goes, "That scrapple is doing really good things for your health." So
Yeah,
it
of
was
course.
just a very interesting, and with chickens, when you butcher chickens, you don't eat chicken that day or maybe for a week. Like, they have to get cold in the freezer, at least for me, where I'm like, I want to eat chicken right now because it's just a thing. Well, the day of the slaughter, he was like, "Hey, do you have anything to eat?" And I'm like, I was planning on just fasting because I'm so tired, but we had this little bit of the mutton that I hadn't wrapped up into the freezer yet, and I was like, "Well, do you want to eat the sheep we just slaughtered?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I fried it up right there, and we were like, never been frozen. She had been alive 48 hours before, and we were like, there were a couple more sheep that made us mad last week. These are awfully tasty, and we're like, "Hey, let's just harvest a couple more sheep because it's so good."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Yes, well, especially, an older sheep like that, that maybe you've been milking for a couple years. I mean, the older they are, the more nutrients you get.
And flavor.
There's more there.
Yeah. Now I will say
And flavor.
She was 5-ish, and we also took an oldie who was more around 8 to the slaughterman. And there was a night and day difference in the texture of the meat between the two ewes. The older one was much more, like, you could just tell handling the meat. It was firmer and denser and more tough. So I did hit my friend up in the Isle of Skye because she consumes mutton on a daily basis. And I was like, "How do I manage this?" And she goes, "Lower temp, slower cookery. And you just slow cook that for a very, very long time. And like maybe even the day before in the slow cooker." And I was like, okay, so if you're going to do sheep and you're in America, it behooves you to make a couple of European friends who know what they're talking about, because they just have a different view of everything sheep than most Americans do. So,
but going back to the first part of this story, huge shout out and thank you to you, because as I said, never done anything with a 4-legged critter in terms of dispatching it. And literally, because she'll send me your all's podcast, and I'll listen, and I'll get a call. So I'll listen to y'all in about 15-minute increments before I got to go do something else. But thankfully, one of those things where you talked about sheep butchery had stuck in my head. So this is 2 o'clock in the morning when we're deciding to take this ewe. Thankfully, I remembered enough of what you said about the nuances of butchering sheep. So
that's right. You did pull up that podcast that he was like listening to it while he's assembling all the tools. So thank you for your 3 a.m. advice that you didn't mean to give us with your podcast, because it was very
because from going in blind. I mean, thankfully there was an article out of New Zealand that showed me where to put the 22 to stun her. But I remember you saying about you can either just cut or you can stun and then cut. But so I stunned. I cut, and then I made sure I held on to her until the death throes were done. And then, but that played a huge difference. Like I said, I'm just trying to remember this from your all's podcast, trying to make it up as I go. So thankfully it was all very successful, but giving you all full credit for that, because that's what got us through on that one, because I had no clue what I was doing. I had no sleep, and we were just making do at the moment. So
and then we had a sheep hanging in the tree of our front yard for like the next 2 days. It was cold outside, and our poor little mailman, he never knows what he's gonna find when he comes. Like, there was a sheep hide on the front porch for a while. Like, there's typically laundry baskets of wool hanging around, and I'm like, we're weird, but we're not evil. Please love us.
But in terms of folks have asked us, can I do these sheep that are milked for meat? Yes, absolutely. It doesn't have to be a meat centered breed to get good meat, because
Yeah.
this dairy
Yeah.
cross ewe
Oh, so good.
gave us incredibly good meat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, she won't win any prizes for amounts, and because she had just given birth when this happened. That's why she had the prolapse uterus. There was maybe a quarter cup of fat on her overall body. Like there was caul fat, but that was pretty much it. So,
Yeah.
comparing to the weather we harvested, where I mean there was a good, nice thick covering of fat all over its
Yeah.
side. So, you just, again, like if you're going to dairy, the primary harvest is the milk, but you will have
Yes.
meat as a side product, and it is quite delicious. So,
It is. It's so true. I feel like I say that ad nauseum too many times, because, like you say, in America, mutton is a pejorative.
yeah.
It's a bad word. It's like you don't want mutton, you want lamb. And no, the thing that mutton is flavorful. And if you like the flavor of lamb, you're gonna love mutton because it's just lamb times 5. Like it's just more flavorful, more marbled,
Yeah.
and literally, and it basically in every way, it is more delicious. And so that is one of the chief yields I look forward to. And even the fancy, chefy pants are starting to learn this, and they'll intentionally source beef for their, Michelin starred restaurants
Yeah.
from old dairies, from dairy cows that are 11 years old. And that is by far and away the most flavorful, especially a dairy animal that you are spending the extra time to rotationally graze, make sure they've got all their mineral. Like you have an extraordinarily healthy, delicious animal, maybe with just, a prolapsed uterus, just one thing. But other than that,
Yeah.
that is a recklessly delicious carcass.
Well, you and your listeners might be excited
Yeah.
to hear my next book will be the Guide to Homestead Sheep Cookery with both meat and cheese recipes in those. So don't have a timestamp on that because 2 years
That's great.
is not conducive to getting manuscripts done, but it's in the works. So
Trust. I know all about that. Yes, and that's really the key. I think that gives mutton a bad name is we're afraid of flavor generally. We like blandness, but also we don't know how to cook. And if you could just learn how to braise, pan fry, and roast, specifically braise, then you open up the entire old ewe carcass to just be extravagantly delicious. It's not a compromise. It's not eating your vegetables. It's something you look forward to.
if your world of meat is limited to a steak, pork chop, or lamb chop, where it's 3 minutes on each side, then of course something like mutton is going to be awful because you can't do it in 6 minutes. But you know, if you will slow cook that same piece of meat with a little bit of salt for a day or two, and you get all those juices and everything else, it is delectable. And I have actually a leg of lamb, or it's Luna, so I guess leg of mutton. I don't know which one. in the wine cooler, aging currently. There is actually a book called Much Ado About Mutton, and it's a chef from, I think, England, or butcher shop chef combo kind of thing from England, where he's like his personal mission is to bring mutton back, and it's it has recipes. It's very educational. He actually breaks down like where in England the mutton was preferred from based off of the pasture forages and the age of the sheep and like all of the things. So I happened upon this book at a friend's house accidentally she just likes sheep, and I was like, this is my book, hallelujah. Yeah. So the people in the peasant areas where they would burn peat would actually hang mutton from the ceiling to get all that peat smoke, and then they would slice it and fry it like bacon, and we're somehow much healthier than the local populace when illnesses went through.
Yeah, another book that I like for lamb cookery is the Nordic Cookbook by Magnus Nilsson, I think his name is, and he's a super fancy chef, but he just went through a bunch of the Nordic countries, and compiled this encyclopedia. It's more like an encyclopedia than a cookbook of how the peasants were living and surviving in that climate. And not there's some pork in there, but it is mostly lamb. It's mostly lamb, and it's a lot of lamb preservation, like phenolor, curing the back leg of a lamb as you would a prosciutto. And it's wonderful. Even preserving blood and really cool recipes. Very, very old school peasant. That's awesome. So, yeah, I think it's so cool. I'm really glad you gave me a copy of your book, because it's really awesome, and I do want people to know about it. So I'm going to mention it again. The Guide to Homestead Dairy Sheep.
Thank you very much.
Probably the sole book on the topic ever written in the history of the universe, and available to purchase.
One other book, it's out of print, that was written specifically on dairy sheep, and then there's another book that was self-published called The Eco Flock, and she discusses dairying of sheep, but that is not the main focus. So I am the only in print available book on sheep.
That's right.
So
it's awesome. That's great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me for like 2 hours. That was awesome.
That's amazing.
And now I'm just, I have to be careful what I mention to my son Wallace about all the things that the homestead can produce, because he'll just go for it and start doing things. And I know that sheep dairying is going to be all the more tempting to him.
Is this the
now.
part where I mentioned that sheep were used as draft animals and to pull buggies in the Alps for a long amount of time? Is that where I say that?
No way.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
You can find photos of people in these little carts, and they're pulled by sheep, and they just make me happy. One of these days, I will train a draft sheep, but I haven't got there yet. So.
Yeah, well, if you've trained a dairy sheep, you're probably more than 70% there to draft sheep. That's pretty cool.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Kyle and Rachel. It was really, really great to have you on, and we'll probably do something like this again when you start writing about sheep cookery, which would be fun to do, because I'm a big fan of that. Yes. I love the eating of sheep. Another reason to milk your sheep.
Well, and it's so awesome. Like I was making some cheese the other day, and I was like, oh, I really wish that Monzino I put in the wine cooler yesterday was ready already. And then it just hit me. I was like, I am growing my own charcuterie board in my backyard. This is so cool. I have meat and cheese. So anyway, thank you for having us nerd out about all of the home charcuterie board production.
Thank you again, Meatsmiths, for listening to our take on all things meat making, householding, and culture keeping. We hope it's helped you in growing your home around the harvest.